Welcome to Insights in Touch, the podcast where industry insight meets meaningful conversation. Hosted by Kristen Thorne, this series, presented by iFraud Foundation, explores the real issues facing the property and casualty insurance world. It's the pulse of an industry under pressure and the voices working to protect its future. Stay informed, stay connected, stay in touch. Now, here's your host, Kristen Thorne.
All right. So I'm joined by Brian Sampson, the president of the Empire State Chapter of the Associated Builders and Contractors. Brian, thank you so much for joining us to talk fraud.
Thanks, Kristen. It's good to be with you.
Look, you and I met. It's been a bit here, and I remember when I first met you and we started talking about this topic. You feel very strongly about it. Why?
Two reasons, really. So one is, let's look at the human side of this. The fact that we have people here who don't speak English that are being manipulated by organized crime to commit felonies so that they can extract money out of them. And the people that are bullied into these things are ultimately on the hook for a whole lot of different baggage, most of it being very financial, right? So I think anytime you have an opportunity to deal with the bullying issue, I want to be involved because I don't believe that that's anything that we need in our industry. That's one. Two, this fraud has caused rampant issues within the construction industry here in New York, already incredibly expensive to build, right? A highly regulated, highly taxed state. Now you add another layer because we have this unique law that doesn't exist in any other state in the country that allows organized crime to manipulate it. We have a workers' comp system that automatically just assumes every worker is legitimately injured. And by the way, most of them are, but unfortunately we have these other cases, which has now led to a huge issue in the insurance industry with those carriers that are willing to write general liability, workers' comp, and excess lines here in the state of New York. So it's the combination of all of those things that have just made construction that much more expensive. And if we really want to make life better for the average New Yorker, we have to fix this issue. And we're way past the point of our elected officials, lending a deaf ear to this issue. It's a catastrophe. It's a problem right now, but we have to fix it.
How does this affect your members?
So it affects them in a couple of different ways. One is general liability insurance, workers' comp is a big piece of the industry, right? We work in an industry that still, as much as it's gotten better on the safety perspective, is still an industry that can have injuries that take place. So they have to go out and have general liability and workers' comp insurance in order to bid it. Because of the law and because New York is unique, fewer and fewer carriers are willing to write policies in the state of New York. Now, mind you, insurance carriers, they're about making money. So if there was an opportunity to make money in New York, you'd damn well be sure they would be here. They're not in the market to lose money. So they have vacated New York, where there's only 3 or 4, maybe 5 carriers that will write general liability insurance for contractors. So,
yeah, and I don't think we should blame them for that. I think a lot of people, look at them as the big bad insurer. Well, listen, people are running a business. Everybody here is running a business. Unfortunately, we also have lawyers and doctors that are running businesses too. And yes, everybody is making money. But the point is, I think a lot of people look at the insurers and the insurance companies and go, well, this, how dare you? Well, if you are operating in an environment where it is clear that there's something wrong, right? Whether it's fraud, whether too many people are getting injured, there's something is wrong. As a business, you you leave. It no longer makes sense for
You
you
bet.
to do business there. And so I take a lot of issue when people use that as an argument that, well, blame this all on the insurance companies. Well, the insurance companies are reacting to a unprecedented
That's right.
level of fraud right. And I don't think we should blame them for that. I think a lot of
Heck
people,
no.
look at them as the big bad insurer. Well, listen, people are running a business. Everybody here is running a business. Unfortunately, we also have lawyers and doctors that are running businesses too. And yes, everybody is making money. But the point is, I think a lot of people look at the insurers and the insurance companies and go, well, this, how dare you? Well, if you are operating in an environment where it is clear that there's something wrong, right? Whether it's
Yep.
fraud, whether too many people are getting injured, there's something is wrong. As a business, you leave. It no longer makes sense for
You
you
bet.
to do business there. And so I take a lot of issue when people use that as an argument that, well, blame this all on the insurance companies. Well, the insurance companies are reacting to a unprecedented
That's right.
level of fraud in this market.
You bet. And insurance companies are a convenient scapegoat in this entire process, right? But the last I checked, we do live in America. We are still a democracy, for whatever that is today. People have the right to make money. And by making money, they're able to do more things. The carriers, if they can make money, will write more premiums in the state of New York, which then lowers the cost for everybody, which means we can build more housing, we can fix more roads, right? Our sewer pipes don't need to be exploding in the middle of winter when it gets too cold. Like that's the challenge that we have right now on the construction side. And that's where our members are really negatively impacted by the circumstances and the laws that exist. And it's why we support creating a Class C felony for anybody that's found to be staging a fraudulent construction accident, to include, to your point, the doctors and the attorneys who are running their own sort of fraudulent scheme as well. So let's just get after everybody and figure out who's to blame, put the blame where it needs to be, fix the system, bring the carriers back, lower the cost of construction.
Because I think, Brian, what people forget is that your members are real people. They have families, they have bills, they have, yes, you are the head of an association. But I know
That's right.
certainly when I was reporting on this, what was very important to me and still is that people understand that fraud hurts all of us. It isn't victimless. It is something that is affecting every single person that lives in New York. When I explain this issue to people who aren't familiar with it, I go, you wonder why we pay more in New York for everything. Yes,
Absolutely.
there are other factors at play, but one of them is fraud, auto fraud, construction injury fraud, personal injury fraud. It is
That's right.
affecting so I think that's an important point for you to make as well, and I'd love for you to talk about it. Like you represent, your members are real people, and this
That's
is
right.
hurting them and their families and their communities.
You know, I have the opportunity to represent some of the greatest people in New York, right? And those are contractors who have created these businesses and employ hundreds of thousands of people. Those people provide for their families. It's an honor to represent them. And it's terrible to see a group of elected officials who for years have discounted them and said, you're contractors, you make money, you cheat the system, you steal wages. We're on a podcast, so I'll pardon my French. It's bull, right? These are the people that care about who's on their payroll. They know them intimately. They create safety systems and safety structures to protect them. They want them to go home at night. They provide for their families. These are the same contractors that also go to your local, right, your baseball or your lacrosse league or your basketball league. Look at the kids back of their shirts. Those are our people. Those are our members. They're sponsoring your kids. Why are we not protecting them so that they can protect us? It's just, I can't stand bullies and I can't stand government that wants to put their finger on the thumb and just adjust the scales one way or the other. That's why I continue to do this and why I want to represent these people and why we have to fix this issue. It's it's so unfair to them to be categorized and looked at in a certain way when the work that they do benefits all of us, every taxpayer in the state of New York.
Why do you think the Class E felony, if we can get that stipulated as a crime in the state of New York, may help this?
So I think for two reasons, Kristen. One is doctors and attorneys are licensed, and you cannot have a license in the state of New York if you have a felony. So how great would it be to really fix it very quickly by knowing doctors and attorneys can lose their license and not be able to function in the state of New York and provide for their families because they were a part of this scheme. And we've seen this, by the way, right? Since we introduced this bill, a year and a half ago, hundreds of cases have been requested to be removed from the court system by the attorneys who no longer, quote unquote, trust the referral source. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is once you start to pursue people legally, right? And the District Attorneys Association have asked us for this law because they need additional language to clarify what they can and can't do. Once we start to look, that simple fact of the matter is you take down a doctor, you take down an attorney, and they lose their license, watch what happens. The system will be cleared out super fast. When we do that, carriers come back. More importantly, legitimately injured workers will no longer have their cases contested automatically because nobody knows if it's fraudulent or not. They'll get their treatment much, much faster, which now you've fixed your insurance side on the general liability. Now you're going to fix your system on the workers' comp, and the people that are legitimately injured, they're going to get taken care of much faster.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what we sometimes are people who don't really understand this issue, or who are presenting obstacles to the reforms that we're all trying to get done, is they don't realize that this is also hurting immensely legitimately injured people. We've gotten to a point where with this fraud now, and you can't blame, it's human nature. It's you cry wolf. We see it over and over and over. So unfortunately now what's happening is all these claims are being looked at with a sense of skepticism. And that is sad. That's sad for the people who legitimately have injuries, and we know that they are out there. It's also creating more obstacles when it comes to getting them paid faster. I mean,
Right.
the whole system is it's just destroyed, and it is going to take quite an effort. What else would you like to see right now, Brian? What else are you kind of urging to see happen with this effort?
All of this kind of ties in together on so many different levels, right? But one of the things that we also have to address during this process is, yes, we need to create that Class C felony, which means if you are a part of that process and you help stage that accident, you can be pursued legally. The secondary piece of that is we have to fix the litigation loan industry, right? So here in New York, if you have a claim like we're seeing in the construction industry right now, where you have a workers' comp and a general liability claim, you can go out to this litigation loan marketplace and get a loan against the future return of your litigation. I get it, understand it, don't think it's something that shouldn't happen. However, it's not regulated in New York. It's a wild, burning industry right now, largely financed by, allegedly, the Russian mob and hedge funds. What do hedge funds do? They want to make more money. How do you make more money? You invest in things where you get lots of return for your dollars. So these loans come in. They don't necessarily get to the worker, but they're at such a high interest rate that it just, what you've done is you've created a scenario where that worker can't actually get out of the claim, even if they want to go back to work. They now owe so much money through this litigation loan that they have to pay. So create the Class C felony, take litigation loans, roll them under the Department of Financial Services, let them be regulated like traditional loans, drop the interest rates. They did it in California, so we know it can be done. That it's still an option and a resource, but it's not being abused by that same runner, that same doctor, that same attorney that's manipulated that worker on the front side.
example, a great regulation, Brian, as you bring up third-party litigation funding, would be, as of now, when defense counsel wants to say to a plaintiff's counsel, hey, is there third-party litigation funding here? Meaning, is there an outside influence that could be having an effect here? And if there is, we would like to know that, but because we are defending our client. The way it exists now, so people understand, is that the plaintiff's counsel doesn't have to provide any of that information. There could be an outside organization fully funding a lawsuit, and the defense, who is trying to defend their client under New York State regulations and laws and judges and everything else, they have no right, apparently, to know. I mean, it's really, we know that one of the standards and the beauty of our justice system is that we get to see who is bringing the charges or the complaints against us, but not when it comes to this stuff. When it comes to this stuff, defense attorneys have to turn over everything. They got to open everything up. They got to give everything to the plaintiffs. And the second they go to the plaintiffs, we would like to know if some outside person is funding this lawsuit. The judges go, oh, no, you're not entitled to that. And I think that's one of the other things we're hoping to see that New York will address. And I think once that information, people know that it can be out there, that they may be a little more careful with how they're doing business.
Think about this, Kristen, right? In the criminal courts, if you're the prosecutor and you don't turn over to the defense everything that you have, you get hit with a Brady violation, the case gets thrown out. All other aspects of the legal process. This, absolutely not the case. The one big piece of information that can change how defense counsel goes about, pursuing this case, they can't have that piece of information. I mean, our courts are based on you're innocent until you're proven guilty. It's just the opposite here. The contractor, the carriers, you are guilty and you really have no chance to prove your innocence unless you're willing to go to the mat and fight against all of those things. Why can't we just have this be just like every other criminal case that we pursue?
By the way, thus I digress, but I know so much about this. The other problem here is that you have defense counsel trying to figure out who the plaintiff himself or herself is. They are not entitled to know the exact identity of the person bringing the complaint against their client. To me, I have seen the transcripts of defense counsels asking for the true name and ID and address and birth date of the person bringing the complaint against them. And the judges do not require the plaintiff's attorney to provide the valid identifying. I mean, this is just, as someone who's covered homicides and violent crime in courtrooms for years, you would never see this. And why I don't understand why it's allowed in a civil court of law. Brian, I want to ask you, we talk about insurers leaving New York. Why is that detrimental? How is that hurting us?
Let's make it a pretty simple visual. Or auditory example for everybody, right? So you can have in the Bronx $100 million affordable housing project. Jump across the river over to Hoboken. You have the exact same project. Not exact, but incredibly simple. Still $100 million. In New Jersey, that $100 million project, about 2.5% of the total cost of that project is going to be gobbled up by workers' comp, general liability, and excess insurance. $2.5 million. Now, there's a river that separates Hoboken from this. Market's the same. Materials are the same. Workers on the New York side are way better than on the New Jersey side, but we'll leave that for another day. Labor market's just the same, right? But that same project in the Bronx, it's 12.5 to 14% of that price. So 12.5 to $14 million. So how fewer apartments are you actually going to get in the Bronx versus Hoboken? How does that play out? In Hoboken, as a contractor, you're going to get somewhere between 6 and 8 carriers that will quote you for all those insurances. In New York, you'll get 2, maybe 3. Deductible in New Jersey, 250 to 500,000. Deductible in New York, 4 million.
Wow.
Right? So that's just a building. Multiply that by the new Penn Station, by the Second Avenue subway, by right, all of these other things, roads, bridges, everything. It's just that's the craziness of the whole thing.
Brian, affordable housing. I keep raising this alarm. We need desperately more
Yes.
affordable housing. I work with a charity on Long Island, and what we do day in and day out is try to get people affordable housing. It is so hard. We have families with children that are facing eviction all the time that we are trying to save, and all they want is an affordable place to live. And I hope that we can get the message out there that one of the biggest factors preventing that from happening is this fraud. Are the laws
That's right.
and I really hope that we are effective in doing that, because as someone who sees how desperately we need this, we need to get rid of these obstacles, and this is one of them. So Brian Sampson, anything else we missed you would like people to know? Anything at all?
We're not only fighting this on the state level, we're also fighting this on the federal level. So Congressman Langworthy out of the Western New York area actually has a bill in Congress that would exempt projects from the absolute liability standard if they are federally approved projects, federal infrastructure, right? Get federal grants. So we're trying to attack this on multiple fronts. But at the end of the day, the governor and the Senate and the Assembly have to have the courage to do 2 things: protect those workers that are being manipulated and bullied by organized crime, and protect every taxpayer in the state of New York from a stupid, antiquated law that doesn't exist in any other state in the nation. No other state. If we can do that, we can build affordable housing. We can have better roads, better bridges, better sewers. They just have to have the political will to stand up to the only people that benefit from this, which are the trial attorneys. Nobody else benefits from this law. Well, I guess there are some corrupt doctors that work with bad trial attorneys, but again, they're the only ones benefiting from this, and I bet they're a very small percentage of the population of the state of New York.
I'm glad you brought up that federal law, that proposal. That's great. That would be a huge help to New York, and it should go into effect. Brian Sampson, president of the Empire State Chapter of the Associated Builders and Contractors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kristen. Appreciate the time.